John 6 and Hebrews 13, the nature of Christ's sacrifice. The interpretation of John 6 must be governed by the full testimony of Scripture. Jesus declares, "Unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you." The question is whether this language introduces a literal mechanism for receiving grace or communion through food, or whether it expresses, in vivid metaphor, the necessity of faith in his atoning work. Hebrews 13, 8-15 provides a doctrinal safeguard that clarifies this issue. The passage begins with a foundational declaration. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. Hebrews 13:8. Salvation has always been the same, by belief in the promise of God given to Abraham. From Abraham forward, righteousness was credited through faith. Jesus did not change the rules. God does not alter his redemptive covenant or revise the conditions of salvation. If Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever, then the means by which grace is received has never shifted from faith to ritual consumption. This statement protects doctrine and demonstrates that nothing new was added to the salvation plan. Any claim that grace and communion is now mediated through physical ingestion would imply a change in divine method, and therefore a change in God himself. The warning that follows is emphatic. Do not be led away by diverse and strange teachings, for it is good for the heart to be strengthened by grace, not by foods which have not benefited those devoted to them. Hebrews 13:9. This is a very strong warning. The author calls certain teachings strange, meaning foreign, outside of Scripture. He calls them diverse, a term that to a Hebrew audience carries the idea of mixture or impurity, something unclean, like an unclean spirit. The warning is about being led away from salvation by a foreign and unclean doctrine, and the doctrine is plainly identified: seeking grace, connection with Christ from food. The heart is strengthened by grace, not by foods. Foods have never benefited those devoted to them in terms of securing salvation. The author then writes, "We have an altar from which those who serve the tent have no right to eat." Hebrews 13:10. The word "we" includes the author himself. He includes himself among those who have no right to eat the sacrifice of Christ. This cannot mean that faithful covenant followers are excluded, because God would not describe his own law as strange, diverse, foreign, or demonic. The Mosaic system was instituted by God and pointed forward to Christ. Even Paul, after coming to faith in Jesus, remained a practicing Jew. There are numerous examples of Paul maintaining the law and practicing Judaism. Acts 21:26 records that he entered the temple and participated in purification rites. Observing what God had commanded was not rebellion against Christ. And more clearly, Paul went to the temple to bring alms and participated in offerings, which is to sacrifice. In the next verse, Paul was found purified in the temple, and so Paul served at the temple. Therefore, those who serve the tent cannot mean faithful covenant believers who trusted or did not trust the promise. Therefore, Dr. Brant Peters' argument for a dividing line is completely misplaced both with syntax and theology. The contrast is not between true Jews and Christians. Rather, the focus is on the category of sacrifice and the impossibility of eating the atonement offering. Verse 11 explains, "For the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the holy places by the high priest as a sacrifice for sin are burned outside the camp." The atonement sacrifices, the sin offerings, were never eaten. Their blood was brought into the holy place, but their bodies were burned outside the camp. Jesus is the Lamb who takes away the sin of the world. He is the sin offering, and the sin offering was not to be consumed. Verse 12 completes the typology. So Jesus also suffered outside the gate in order to sanctify the people through his own blood. Just like the sin sacrifice, Jesus suffered outside the gate. The author deliberately identifies Christ with the non-consumable atonement category. If the type was not eaten, and Christ fulfills that type, then his atoning sacrifice is not presented as edible. It sanctifies through his blood, not through ingestion. The response commanded in verse 13 is not to eat, but to identify. Therefore, let us go to him outside the camp and bear the reproach he endured. Participation is believing loyalty, not ritual consumption. Verses 14 to 15 complete the theological movement. For here we have no lasting city, but we seek the city that is to come. Through him then let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God, that is the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. The sacrifice now offered is praise, the fruit of lips confessing his name. The altar believers possess culminates not in edible flesh, but in continual worship grounded in a finished atonement. When this is brought back to John 6, the interpretive key becomes clear. In John 6, Jesus repeatedly equates eating and drinking with believing. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst. The language is metaphorical and covenantal, not ritual and mechanical. To eat his flesh and drink his blood is to believe in his atoning sacrifice, to internalize by faith what he accomplishes on the cross. Hebrews 13 explicitly warns against strange and foreign teachings that claim grace comes through food. It identifies Christ with a sin offering that was never to be eaten. It declares that salvation has not changed, and it directs believers to praise, belief, and faithful endurance, not to ritual consumption as a means of obtaining grace. Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The promise has always been received by belief. The sacrifice has been offered once for all. The call now is not to eat the atonement, but to trust it, confess it, and follow the one who suffered outside the gate.